Hello, thank you for being here today with us. This is not my first time in front of you, and it won't be my last time unless we finally see meaningful changes happening in the Department of Children and Family Services. Since I last stood before you, 2 more babies have suffered high-profile DCFS tragedies. Sophia Faye Davis, Zaraz Walker. DCFS was aware of allegations that put both children in danger, but once again did nothing. We as a state didn't just fail Sophia, we failed her mother, Cassie Needham, a mother who asked for a safety plan from DCFS and was instead told her concerns were unfounded. She said, "The system failed me," and she is right. The system is woefully broken. Zaraz Walker's body has still not been found. When DCFS has multiple run-ins with the mother, then they still determine concerns to be unfounded and walk away from a child in need. Folks, we are failing them. Babies with broken bodies and doctors raising red flags one after another, and still cases labeled unfounded. As a father and grandfather, it doesn't just break my heart, it angers me to no end. We are not here today to blame frontline DCFS workers. DCFS is broken at the top. While Director Smith has been leading DCFS, it has received hundreds of millions in additional funding. It's clear that more money does not equal better results. Deaths of children in state care are on the rise. No one is saying that managing DCFS is easy, but it's been 3 years. We have not seen tangible signs of progress, only more problems and more excuses. DCFS under J.B. Pritzker and Marc Smith continues to careen from one tragedy to another without a clear path forward. These kids matter. Their lives matter. Friends, DCFS is sinking, and until the ship is righted, heartbreaking and horrific stories like those of A.J. Friend, Damari, Sophia, and Zaraz will continue to be told.
I'd like to thank Representative Weber for that. Good morning, everyone. Deanne Mazzocchi, State Representative for Illinois' 47th House District, and Assistant Minority Leader, and my hometown is Elmhurst, Illinois. Illinois' Department of Children and Family Services has been ranked at the bottom of the barrel compared to other states for decades. But Governor Pritzker made a campaign pledge that he would do what past governors on both sides of the aisle had promised to do but could not, make DCFS better. Governor Pritzker insisted that we should be able to count on DCFS to fight for vulnerable children. Yet another broken promise. Governor Pritzker handpicked Marc Smith to lead DCFS. So I understand why Governor Pritzker feels heavily invested in Director Smith. But if 6 contempt of court orders is not enough of a wake-up call for Governor Pritzker that his approach isn't working, what will be? I am an attorney. I want to be clear. Courts do not issue contempt of court orders lightly, particularly against the director of a state agency. To issue a contempt of court order against the director by name for him personally, that is a court facing extreme methods of last resort. It is unheard of that things sink so low that we have to get to this point not just one time, but at least 6 times. It was bad enough that DCFS had to receive prior court orders in connection with many of these children who were being held in impossible situations. But a contempt citation means that court orders were ignored repeatedly, chronically, that the court believed there was no other choice to get these kids some relief, and that is not acceptable. 3 years into the Pritzker administration, his silence is deafening. He owns this. We want to hear him say, problem solved, not, I was not involved. When it comes to this governor, personnel is policy. These court orders are directed specifically to his person and his policies. A judge has gone so far as to call what happened to one of these kids torture. That happened on the governor's watch. What is going to actually be enough for Governor Pritzker to decide it's time to change course and to decide he's going to take some responsibility? Does he really need another consultant to tell him that kids should not be living like this? Let's talk about the first two contempt orders. 9-year-old AM locked up in a psych ward for 223 days. CRM, not only 150 days of improper facilities, but also having to sleep in a utility closet. We're now up to 6 contempt of court orders involving 6 kids, all of whom have very tragic histories, and they were entrusted to the care of our state. How many more orders does he need to get involved, to take responsibility, and to finally say something? The people of Illinois deserve to know what Governor Pritzker is going to do to keep these incredibly at-risk kids in our state's care safe. And if DCFS is not capable of getting these kids the treatments and placements that they need, and Governor, you've got 6 court orders telling you they're not doing it right, then get a competent person, one who ideally directly reports to you, who is going to monitor exactly what is happening with these kids, and who is finally going to make a difference and be a voice for change. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to State Representative Steve Reich from Illinois' 63rd House District. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Deanne. I'm going to take a little more of a 30,000-foot look at this whole thing. Deanne covered the contempt citations pretty well, but unfortunately those contempt citations are merely a symptom of a larger disease, and I don't want to focus on them without telling us or talking about what actually the disease is that we're faced. Much of the problem that we're facing with child welfare these days is fueled by an opioid crisis that we are in the middle of and are having a hard time finding our way out of. One thing we have learned, however, throughout this crisis is that parents or people who are addicted to opioids, they don't get out of treatment and are cured. They go back 5, 6, 7, 10 times. And every time there's a relapse, and there's a kid in the house, that kid is now subject to being taken back out of the house and put someplace else until that parent comes back out of treatment and the family is put back together. We can't have that. Adding to this is the fact is that agencies that place kids in foster care are now losing their insurance coverage. I just got a call 2 weeks ago from one of the largest agencies in the state who told me about the fact that insurance companies are pulling out of Illinois. They're pulling out of Illinois as far as covering these particular types of risks because, among other things, Illinois does not have a cap on liability damages like most other states have, and the cost of coverage is just becoming too burdensome to bear. The problem is that these agencies have got to have liability insurance, and if they can't find it, we're going to start seeing these agencies go out of business, and then where are those kids going to go? The biggest problem we have is cultural. Kids in danger are treated instrumentally to promote the rehabilitation of their parents, with the inevitable result that their most precious developmental years are lost in bureaucratic and judicial red tape. We have kids bouncing out of houses, back into homes, out of homes, back into homes, until they fall out of the system completely or die. Can't have that. It's time to stop letting efforts to fix the child welfare system get derailed by those who are concerned more with abstract demands of social justice and start asking the most important question: How do we get these kids out of that cycle that they find themselves inevitably brought into? And how do we find loving, caring foster homes and permanency for these kids so that they can grow up to become adults and don't re-enter the system? Because we've been dealing with this. This is a cycle. This is a cycle we've been dealing with for the past God knows how many years. And it doesn't seem to end, because what we're doing is we're focusing on the wrong problem here. We're focusing on family rehabilitation when we should be focusing on the benefits and the welfare of children. I live in Woodstock, Illinois. A.J. Friend was buried in a shallow, unmarked grave a little more than a mile from my house, which I drive by all the time, and it's a constant reminder to me of the failures of this agency. DCFS needs to be transformed from a top-down bureaucratic agency that sets policy that's often at odds with local communities and the needs of local communities and parents. It must become an agency that integrates and is part of the local multidisciplinary teams that act on child welfare problems within the community, know the parents, know the circumstances in these communities, and can actually provide some answers and some solutions. The current system is broken. I've been dealing with this ever since they found A.J. Friend's body a mile from my house. I've been dealing with this issue in a working group. I've been dealing with this in a bipartisan, bicameral manner with many of my colleagues. We've all come to the same conclusion. This is an agency that cannot be fixed. Governor Pritzker has had going on 4 years now to do something about this. He promised he would do something about it, and he's done nothing. It's time for this to change. I'm going to hand it over now to my colleague, David Welter, to close it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Reich. State Representative David Welter of the 75th District out of Morris, Illinois, also the House Republican Caucus Chair. As Representative Mazzocchi mentioned, since January of this year, DCFS Director Marc Smith has been held in contempt of court 6 times. Actually, this morning, I believe there was another contempt hearing, so maybe by the time of this press conference, there's an additional contempt against him. But this is a continuous cycle that we will probably continue to see unless action is taken. He's done nothing to change the way his agency is handling these cases, which is why he continues to receive these citations for willful, repeated violations of court orders. Equally distressing, since this first came to our attention, there have been crickets from Governor Pritzker. The lives of 41,970 children are in the care of the state just this last fiscal year, and they are being mistreated. In 2021 alone, 356 children were held in hospitals longer than necessary by DCFS. What does our state's top official have to say about it recently? Nothing. In May of 2019, Pritzker said, and I quote, "This agency and children under its care were neglected for years. That changes right now." Well, folks, it's 2022, and nothing has changed. We threw more money at a problem, hoping for better results, but statistically speaking, looking at the numbers, the court orders, things have only gotten worse. This is unacceptable. These children, our most vulnerable residents, are trusting the state to take care of them and to keep them safe. They have been failed repeatedly. While my colleagues and I have called for action over and over again, the governor has sat idly by and allowed these vulnerable children to suffer. The statistics are deeply troubling. And I think it's important when we get in front of the public or we have discussions regarding DCFS to look at the numbers. I know these children are not part of a statistic. They are not just a number. However, it is so shocking when you look at the numbers and how they break down. In fiscal year 2021, there was a staggering, and I mentioned this earlier, 41,970 children indicated as abused or neglected in the DCFS system. 13,960 children were indicated as re-abused. Re-abused. Every year since the governor was elected, that number has grown. Last year in DCFS system, there were 20 deaths attributed to abuse and 68 deaths due to neglect. 4,622 children were indicated as sexual abuse victims. Among those were 54 indicated as victims of human trafficking. That is not what leadership looks like. This should be a top priority for the legislature right here in Springfield, and it should be a top priority for Governor Pritzker. We need to act, and we need to act now. We must demand full transparency. That is what is so important. Decisions that are being made in this governor's administration are passing by with limited to no transparency. Why are over 13,000 children being re-abused in a single year? Why are more children dying? Despite additional funding being provided by DCFS, by the General Assembly, why are these cases increasing? Because as everybody up here has talked about, the system is broken. The governor is doing very little to nothing to actually change this. During the campaign, he spoke a good game, how he cared about these children and how he was going to change the system and he was going to protect the children. He has failed on that just as he has failed on all of his other promises that we've seen over the last several years.